wanted to begin today by discussing the federal government's role in cybersecurity, and specifically in cyber incident management, which fits primarily in 3 lanes of effort. First being asset response, which includes mitigation of vulnerabilities, removing the adversary, restoring operations, and providing recommendations to further improve security and the sharing of information that we learn in those incidents across critical infrastructure sectors while protecting the privacy and civil liberties of the affected entities. This is primarily the role of the Department of Homeland Security through our National Cybersecurity and Communications and Integration Center, which we call the NCIC. And we do this in coordination with our sector-specific agencies like the Department of Energy. The second line of effort is in threat response. And that includes the attribution, the pursuit, the disruption of the threat actor, whether it be a nation state or an individual hacker that's going after a system. This is primarily the role of the FBI, but I note that DHS and other agencies with law enforcement authorities also participate in that activity, as well as military intelligence agencies. And then the third lane being intelligence support, which provides intelligence analysis to federal government departments and agencies, and then we do our best to downgrade that information to make it unclassified to share with stakeholders. But properly addressing cybersecurity incidents requires the concurrent activity of that asset response and the threat response. We have to mitigate the vulnerabilities that exist in our assets. We have to deter the activities of our malicious actors to address all sides of the issues. Our role at DHS is primarily in that asset response, and that's the main focus of what I'm going to talk to you about today. So DHS's role in protecting critical assets, systems, and networks involves serving as a national hub for cybersecurity information sharing through the NCIC, shaping and promoting the adoption of cybersecurity best practices, providing incident response assistance to asset owners as needed, working to build a stronger cyber ecosystem, and providing a common baseline for federal cybersecurity. We work closely with our customers and stakeholders in federal departments and agencies, in the private sector, and that's across all 16 critical infrastructure sectors. So energy sectors, IT, comms, financial services, all of the sectors working in coordination with the sector-specific agencies. And we also work closely with our state, local, tribal, and territorial partners, the SLTT governments. With the private sector, we're working mainly to share information with them on threats and vulnerabilities, providing assessments of their systems, and working directly with them on incident response when they ask for our assistance. This either happens directly with the private sector partners that we have information sharing relationships with, or it can also happen with conglomerations of private sector partners through information sharing and analysis centers, or ISACs. With our state and local partners, we recognize that state governments represent a vital component of our nation's critical cyber preparedness and response capabilities, and they're the frontline stakeholders and force multipliers in the national effort to protect critical infrastructure, and SLTT governments contribute to the information sharing, capacity building, and coordination efforts needed to develop robust and effective cybersecurity capabilities. So let's talk a little bit about the threat space as we see it from the Homeland Security perspective. The nation's critical infrastructure sectors face risks from a variety of hazards and threats, both natural and man-made, such as the aging and failing infrastructure, extreme weather, and evolving terror and cyber threats that impact our economy and the American people. As many of you are certainly aware, many industrial control systems operate physical processes that produce goods and services that we rely on, such as energy, drinking water, emergency services, transportation, postal and shipping, and public health. In the past, those control systems were typically isolated, distinct, and closed units of computer automation. Access to managing those control systems was limited to very few people and normally required a physical presence on the premises of an entity to operate the control systems. That physical access to the control systems was protected, and that allowed us to control the risk from that perspective. But today's control systems are networked and digital in nature and often managed by remote employees, contractors, and vendors via internet connections, resulting in control systems becoming more vulnerable to online threats. To address those threats to control systems, DHS established the Industrial Control System Cyber Emergency Response Team, or the ICS CERT, which is a component of the NCIC. As its name applies, ICS CERT helps industry secure their industrial control systems and works to reduce risks to computer-controlled infrastructure by partnering with law enforcement and the intelligence community and coordinating efforts among federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial governments and control systems owners, operators, and vendors. ICS CERT coordinates closely with the sector-specific agencies when working with affected entities. For example, DHS and the Department of Energy routinely and regularly share information with U.S. critical infrastructure companies, including utility owners and operators, to ensure they have the information they need to protect their systems from malicious cyber activity. ICS CERT also works across multiple sectors. So they work with energy companies, water companies, critical manufacturing, nuclear facilities, etc., to help provide that support. Particularly with energy, we work with the electric subsector to help them understand risks associated with malicious cyber activity, physical attacks, and or other hazards. We do this by efficient information sharing, assessment of critical assets, and joint planning and exercises. When an entity experiences an incident that may affect their control systems, ICS CERT may provide free on-site incident response services. They can perform remote network diagnosis to determine the extent of a compromise, and can deploy flyaway teams to meet with the affected organization and assist with incident response. The ICS CERT also has a malware lab that performs digital media and malware analysis of affected systems, and can assess the possible effects that malicious software vulnerabilities may have on critical infrastructure systems, and then share this information and analysis broadly. ICS CERT has also been engaged with the ICS vendor community for years. The vendors are actively tracking emerging vulnerabilities and issuing patches and updates to address security issues. It's our experience that vendors are concerned about the integrity of their products and coordinate vulnerability disclosure and mitigation activities with DHS, researchers, and their customer base. ICS CERT also hosts training programs available to federal partners, state partners, private sector, and international partners, and many of them are hosted at our facility that we share with DOE's Idaho National Labs in Idaho Falls. So you may have noticed I've spoken for about 8 minutes or so and not mentioned the National Guard yet. Part of that is because the National Guard's in a unique position in this space, particularly how they interact with the Department of Homeland Security. So in our cybersecurity efforts, DHS works with the Department of Defense and national security issues at the federal level, and we work with state governors' offices at the state level. In a federal response, we would mainly work with the National Guard through the Department of Defense. And that could come through numerous different requests for assistance, much like in a national disaster or in a large-scale cyber incident where DHS capabilities are exhausted. We would make a request to the Department of Defense for support, and DoD would potentially provide that support from some combination of active duty, reserve, or National Guard, whatever is available to provide that, depending on the personnel that's available. And in this way, we would work with the National Guard via the Department of Defense in coordination with DoD, with DHS and other partners who are responding to the incident. In instances where we're working with the states, we work through the governor's offices, working with the organizations that the governor identifies. This may be through the Homeland Security Advisor, the state CIO, the state CISO, or through the Adjutant General of the National Guard. So in this way, we're working with the National Guard through the state, likely in a state active duty status. We recognize that states may work cybersecurity issues with private sector organizations. We've heard many examples of that today and how well that's working out. And they can do that within their state via their National Guard units. When governors are willing to use their resources this way, and a private sector entity is willing to allow the National Guard into their facilities to help with the incident response, then we should see improved cybersecurity for the nation as a whole. To ensure that broader vision, we at DHS generally request that National Guard forces are aware of and trained to the same standards that our incident responders train to, specifically within the NCIC and with the ICS CERT. This helps to ensure that our skills are complementary and interchangeable when we need to work together or work in coordination with one another. And also helps to ensure that we provide the same level of support to private sector entities in all cases. We also like to work with the National Guard to ensure that information indicators that are obtained by the National Guard in their work with the private sector are shared appropriately with the NCIC so that we can enable sharing within the whole community via our automated indicator sharing program and leverage this defense for federal agencies. This enables us to ensure that vulnerability information is shared broadly beyond just the state and can also be shared with other entities who may also be having these same types of issues. So in summary, our ultimate goal is to provide a safe, secure, and resilient infrastructure in our nation. We are eager to work with all partners that are capable of helping us reach that goal, to include sector-specific agencies such as the Department of Energy, state governments, and law enforcement partners. In our experience, we are successful when we routinely engage with organizations with similar training and skill sets who know how to work together and share information with each other robustly. After all, whenever possible, we don't want to be exchanging business cards during the heat of an incident. We want to do as much of that work up front. So thanks again for your time. We really appreciate it.